Oi, what's going on, everybody? It is time for another episode of Balls Deep Breakdowns with your host, me, Uncle Weezy. Thank you for watching. Thank you for spending time with me and my guy here, Smooth Jimmy. Let's get into some stats. Let's get an early jump on the UFC Vegas 30 card that'll be coming up on June 26th, 2021. And the fight that we're going to be concentrating on today is Nzechkwu versus Danilo Marques. Shout out to my guy Googie in the DFS by the Numbers Discord. You asked me to break down this fight. You thought it was interesting. I think it's really interesting too. It's a classic striker versus grappler matchup here. And we've got a couple of guys with some unique skill sets that are a clash of skills. And we're going to need to really look into these numbers in order to figure out, because this fight is about a pick'em right now. We want to kind of try to see which way the stats are telling us to lean, and we might be able to find a way to make some money on this fight if we can find some good angles. I'm going to help you try to find them because I'm trying to find them myself. So let's get into the numbers, start like we always do with the tail of the tape. And this is a great place to start for this fight, man, because you want to talk about somebody with some really unique measurables. Nzechkwu absolutely fits that mold. We see that the age difference here is about 6 years. Nzechkwu, young for a light heavyweight, very early in his career right now as a mixed martial artist at 29 years old. Danilo Marques, 35 years old. We got about an inch of height separating them, but I get the feeling they're going to be about the same height. These guys are both huge. But here's where we see the difference. 83-inch reach for Nzechkwu. That is ridiculous. That is off the charts length that this dude has. So you have to really kind of try to get inside on this guy if you're going to have any success, because with those 83-inch arms, he can hit you when you can't hit him. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look at. You know, how is Danilo Marques going to find his way inside against Kennedy, because he doesn't want to strike with this guy, not at a 6-inch reach disadvantage. And then we also see that this is a southpaw versus orthodox matchup, so both these guys' power kicks and power hands are going to be open for business against their opponent. We see that Kennedy is fighting out of Fortis MMA, and Danilo Marques at Vila de Luta in Brazil. I believe he's out of Sao Paulo, and I believe Vila de Luta is that's Damian Maia's camp, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Danilo Marques does train with Damian Maia. We know that Marques, from his past experience in the UFC, is a grappler first. So that is the tail of the tape for these guys. Now let's look at the professional experience. Also very interesting, because you see Danilo Marques, 35 years old, but only 13 pro fights. Nzechkwu, 29 years old, he's got 9 fights. Record, Nzechkwu 8-1, Marques 11-2. We see Marques got about 27 minutes more of cage time in his professional mixed martial arts career. The average fight time about the same. And we see that Danilo Marques has a 7-year, 2-month career in mixed martial arts. So it looks like he didn't start fighting MMA until he was 28 years old. On the other hand, we have Kennedy here, who's only been fighting as a pro for 4 years and 7 months. And he probably started when he was in his mid-20s, maybe 25, maybe 24. So definitely both these guys have not had really long mixed martial arts careers, which is kind of strange for Marques, who's already 35 years old. And if we look at the UFC experience here, we see that Nzechkwu has had 5 UFC fights. I'm counting the Contender Series fights here. He has a 4-1 record. He's spent 54 minutes in the UFC cage time with an almost 11-minute average fight time, while Marques is 2-0 in the UFC, 24.87 minutes of cage time and about a 12.5-minute average fight time. So let's go to the finished stats here. We see that overall, Nzechkwu is finishing 63% of his wins by KO and none of his wins by sub, while Danilo Marques is showing some pretty good finishing ability here at a 81 total percent finish rate in his career, 45% by sub and 36% by KO. And we see that in the UFC, he has finished one of his 2 wins by submission. That fight was against, that was the most recent fight when he subbed, We just want to scroll over a little bit here. He finished Mike Rodriguez by sub, who is a fish out of water on the mat. And if we look at how these guys lose fights, we see that Kennedy, his only MMA loss has come by submission, while Danilo Marques has had 2 losses. One of them was by KO. And so let's take a closer look into the experience of both of these guys, and I'll go into the advanced stats here. These advanced stats are available on DFS by the Numbers Patreon for only $10 a month, $2.50 a week. You get access to all of Brady's content, which is a lot of stuff. And in addition to that, you get the matchup template. The matchup template will be available in the description of this video for free. Feel free to download it. I've got all 12 fights on there. Also, the advanced stats, which you're looking at right now, is another benefit of being on that. There's a lot of information on here. If we reduce it, we see all the measurables here. We see the record, the finish, wins and losses, experience, striking, grappling, DraftKings, FanDuel numbers, strength of schedule. But if we look at the individual stats here, we see that Nzechkwu's had 4 wins. He got a win against Anton Berzin on the Contender Series. He got another win on the Contender Series against Dennis Bryant. He lost his UFC debut against Paul Craig in the last minutes of that fight. And then we see a win over 1-3 Darko Stosic and a win over 1-1 Carlos Ulberg. And then if we go down here and we take a look at Danilo Marques, he's got 2 UFC fights. They were against Rodriguez and Ibragimov. A win over Rodriguez, who's 3-4 in the UFC, and a win over Ibragimov, who was 0-4 in the UFC. So let's look now. Let's go back to the striking numbers here and take a look and see what we can find. And let's get this zoomed in so we can see the numbers a little bit better. All right, Nzechkwu versus Marques in striking. We see that Nzechkwu lands 5.38 significant strikes per minute out of 12.42 offered. That is a crazy amount of volume for a light heavyweight. Nzechkwu, one of his best qualities as a mixed martial arts is his conditioning. And the guy doesn't get tired. For a guy that is as big and strong as he is, his gas tank does not run out. He is definitely strong in the later parts of a fight. Danilo Marques is landing 1.81 significant strikes per minute out of only 2.05 attempted for a ridiculous 88.24% striking accuracy, while Kennedy Nzechkwu 43.34% striking accuracy. As we go down into the grappling statistics and we see the control time for Marquez's fights, we'll see why he has that really high striking accuracy. It's because almost all of his fights take place on the cage or on the ground. You see his extremely low volume because he grapples first. So that even the numbers are telling us that this is clearly a striker versus grappler fight when we see that the striker, Nzechkwu, is throwing 12.42 significant strike attempts per minute, while the grappler, Danilo Marques, is only offering 2.05. 10 more significant strikes attempts per minute from Nzechkwu. Truly a clash of styles. So, knockdowns per 15 minutes. We see that 0.68% is the knockdown per total significant strikes landed for Kennedy Nzechkwu. Not spectacular, but not bad either. Danilo Marques does not own a knockdown in the UFC, so we're getting 0.55 knockdowns per 15 minutes. If we look at the defensive numbers, we see that Kennedy Nzechkwu is absorbing 5.8 significant strikes per minute, while his opponents are offering 11.22. So Kennedy absorbs more than he lands, but he offers more than his opponents do. So he's higher volume than his opponents, but he's not as good defensively as his opponents have been. We see that he's got a 48% striking defense, while Danilo Marques is only absorbing 1.41 significant strikes per minute out of 2.82 for a 50% striking defense. Neither one of these gentlemen has ever been knocked down in the UFC. Now we got to take a look at some very important grappling statistics here. Nzechkwu has only attempted 1 takedown in 5 fights, something you would expect of somebody that likes to strike first. While on the other hand, in 2 fights, Danilo Marques has attempted 23 takedown attempts. He's gotten 8 of them for a 34% takedown accuracy, and he is averaging 4.83 takedowns per 15 minutes, while Nzechkwu 0. Once again, telling us plain as day, striker versus grappler. How are we going to figure out what the paths to victory in this fight are? It's as plain as the nose on my face, you guys. Either Kennedy Nzechkwu keeps this fight standing, or Danilo Marques is less comfortable and he pieces him up and eventually knocks him out, or Danilo Marques is going to shoot his traditional 11.5 takedown attempts per fight. He's going to stick to Kennedy Nzechkwu like glue and work the entire time to try to get this fight to the ground where he's going to be more comfortable and where Kennedy is going to be much less comfortable. And these numbers are plain as day. 11.5 takedown attempts per fight for Danilo Marques, 0.2 takedown attempts per fight per Kennedy Nzechkwu. So let's look at Kennedy's takedown defense. These are very crucial numbers right here. We know that Marques is going to be shooting takedowns, and just so you guys know, I have done the tape study on this fight as well. In both of Marquez's fights in the UFC, he has shot a takedown in the first 20 seconds of the fight. This guy's not messing around trying to strike with people. You can tell by the 1 point something, significant strikes landed per minute. He doesn't care to strike. He wants to use that Damian Maia brand of jiu-jitsu to take it into deep waters and try to get the submission. And we see that, Danilo Marques is 45% of his wins by submission as a pro mixed martial artist. Kennedy Nzechkwu has successfully defended 26 out of 33 takedown attempts for a 78.79% takedown defense. He has been taken down 1.93 times per 15 minutes. He does have 0.83 submission attempts against him per 15 minutes. I think they came from Paul Craig, and Paul Craig got close early in the fight and finished him with a triangle late in the fight. But this is a very important number. This is a very crucial number here. Kennedy Nzechkwu has been taken down 7 times in the UFC in his 5 fights. Okay? He spent 54.5 minutes in the cage, but he's only been controlled, look at this, 3.15% of the time. So let me just bring out my trusty calculator here. We're going to take 54.45 and we're going to multiply that by 0.0315, and we get that is 1.71 minutes that he has been controlled in the UFC. And he's been taken down 7 times. So if we divide that number by 7, that's basically he's being controlled less than a minute per takedown against him. So even if Danilo Marques does get takedowns in this fight, he may find that it's extremely difficult to keep Kennedy there and to lay on him, because Kennedy has shown not the best takedown defense in some of the fights that I've seen. Darko Stosic actually took him down a few times. And as a matter of fact, we got to be very thorough on this. We want to make sure that we know every fight that this guy has been in, and we want to know how many times his opponents have tried to take him down, what fights he's been successful in, and what fights he hasn't been successful in. So right here, I've got Nzechkwu's numbers, and we're going to look at Elberg, Stosic, Bryant, Berzin, and Craig. We're going to scroll over here to the defensive side of things, and we're going to take a look at the takedown defense. And we see right here, this column right here is the takedown attempts against, 33 total, okay? And he's been taken down 7 times. This 4 out of 10 here was in the Darko Stosic fight. Stosic got 4 takedowns, but look at how much control time he had. 4 takedowns, only 129 seconds of control time. So, that's less than 30 seconds of control time per takedown, and they spent a lot of time with Kennedy's back on the fence as well. So every time that Stosic took down Kennedy, he got right back up. We see that Paul Craig was 1 out of 16 on his takedown attempts. Paul actually pulled guard a couple of times in order to get the fight to the ground where Craig was going to be most comfortable. And Kennedy showed some pretty good top game when he was on top of Craig. He dropped some elbows, showed some good ground and pound, but eventually Craig locked up one of those trademark triangles on him, and immediately he had to tap. And we see that there was 0 takedown attempts here in the Burzin fight, and then he was taken down 2 out of 7 times in his UFC. Oh, it was the Burzin fight where he was taken down 2 out of 7 times. Dennis Bryant had no takedown attempts against him, and we see that, you know, obviously this guy isn't trying to take down people either. So not bad takedown defense for Kennedy Nzechkwu. And we look at Marques's numbers here, and we see that in the Rodriguez fight and in the Ibragimov fight, you know, if we look at the takedown numbers, with 7 takedown attempts here and 16 takedown attempts here for 23 total. He got a total of 8 of them. You know, when he goes for submissions, that's how he's going to try to win the fight. And we see here that, you know, he got 459 seconds of control time in a 592-second fight. So that is a huge percentage. And he was actually controlled by Ibragimov up against the cage quite a bit in his debut, but he still got 90 seconds of control time, and he did get 4 takedowns in that fight as well. So we know that Marques is going to go for takedowns early and often. We know that Nzechkwu has been used to guarding against those takedowns. He's got some pretty good Travis Brown elbows that he uses to defend. He's also super long and super tall, and those guys are hard to take down. But I have noticed that Marques isn't just a one-dimensional takedown artist. He doesn't just shoot for single legs. He goes for sweeps and trips and reaps and throws as well. He's got a number of different ways to get the fight to the ground, and he's pretty effective at it. So let's look at the strength of schedule. We've already seen who these gentlemen have fought. We'll look at the ratio here. We see Danilo Marques has not fought the best competition, a 0.5 ratio, while Nzechkwu, a 1.33 ratio, much better. But Nzechkwu's opponents have not been very experienced, with only 2.8 total fights on average, while Marques has been fighting the slightly more experienced brand of competition. If we look at the wins, you know, Marques, it's the same ratio because he hasn't lost yet in the UFC. So he's not beating impressive competition. He's beating a guy that has an average record of 1.5 wins and 3 losses outside of their competition against Marques. While, you know, Nzechkwu is basically fighting a 500 fighter that has 1 total fight. So, you know, neither one of these guys is fighting particularly experienced competition or a particularly difficult brand of competition. And then Nzechkwu's in his 1 loss, he lost to Paul Craig. We see a 1.5 ratio there and 10 total fights. So, you know, Paul Craig is definitely a more experienced, more, you know, war-tested version of Danilo Marques, who's also a little bit older. So if we look at the, you know, the last 5, you know, Alberg, Stosic, Craig, Bryant, and Burzin, and Nzechkwu's 4-1 there, while we got Rodriguez, Ibragimov, and then prior to the UFC, Clayton Caetano, Mark Palomino, and Myron Dennis. 4-1 also for Marques, but between the Caetano and Ibragimov fight, there was an over 2-year layoff for Marques. So that kind of takes us through the numbers. So let's just kind of summarize everything here. We see that Nzechkwu has really got the advantage in the measurables. It's a southpaw versus orthodox matchup. Danilo Marques has had a longer career, but Nzechkwu has definitely been busier in his mixed martial arts career. We see that Marques is an equal opportunity finisher with 45% by sub and 36% by KO, while Nzechkwu is more of a knockout artist, as a 63% knockout rate and no losses or no wins by sub. So definitely we see a path to victory here for Marques by sub, as only Nzechkwu's only career loss has come by submission, and we see a path to victory here for Nzechkwu by knockout, as one of 2 Danilo Marques's career losses has come by knockout. So we got a path to victory for Marques in the grappling, and we got a path to victory for Nzechkwu in the stand-up game. Nzechkwu's got a big conditioning advantage here. I am actually loving the 3rd round prop on Kennedy Nzechkwu for this reason. We've seen that, you know, for Danilo Marques to be successful, he's going to need to try takedowns early and often. He's going to need to come forward. He can't give Kennedy space. That kind of game plan is exhausting. Offensive wrestling is exhausting. And Danilo Marques isn't known for his gas tank. So I do see a definite path to victory for Kennedy with his conditioning, his toughness. If he can last through those first 2 rounds, if he can stuff a lot of takedowns, he can empty Marques's gas tank and potentially finish him in the 3rd. However, Danilo is going to be very dangerous early in the fight because he's going to be shooting takedowns early and often. Kennedy Nzechkwu was shown that he can be taken down, but he's hard to hold down. So it really comes down to this fight. You know, Nzechekwu's got a lot of advantages here. He's the better striker. He's longer. He's stronger. He's got a much better gas tank. And, you know, being younger helps, you know, with that. And he's almost as experienced a mixed martial artist as Marques is, despite the fact Marques has been doing this 3 years longer than Kennedy has. You know, but with Marques, we see he's going to wrestle. He's going to use that jiu-jitsu game. He's going to try to stick to his opponent. There's definitely a path to victory here early for Marques by submission. If Kennedy makes any mistakes on the mat, he might pay for them. Striker versus grappler matchup, we really went into those takedown numbers for the offense of Marques and for the defense of Nzechkwu. That's kind of the crux of this fight, isn't it? You know, is Nzechkwu going to be able to stuff these takedowns, keep Marques off of him, create space, and use his striking to beat this guy down? Or is Marques going to, you know, stick to him early, wear him down, and find a submission? I tend to believe that Nzechkwu is really tough. You know, I think he'll do better against strikers in the future because he is so tough and he's so hard to knock out. But, you know, this is a pretty good fight for Marques in that he's going to grapple first and he's going to make this uncomfortable for Nzechkwu. I think Nzechkwu probably finds the third round here, and I think he's going to have a path to victory in the third round. I am leaning Nzechkwu here, but I could see Danilo Marques getting that sub early, so we got to be real careful here. This is going to be a great fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm going to be going live here in a little over an hour on Pub Sports Radio doing my weekly show with DFS by the Numbers. It's called Stat Diggers. We go live at 6:15 East, or 6:15 Central Time on Sundays on Pub Sports Radio. Give us a watch over there. We're gonna break down the statistics for every single fight on this card. I'm also going to do a main event breakdown for the Volkov-Gane fight, which will be taking place at UFC Vegas 30 on DFS by the Numbers channel on YouTube. We're going to go balls deep into the statistics for at least a half an hour on this fight and try to give you guys an early lean on the main event for UFC Vegas 30. And then I will be posting more balls deep breakdowns on my channel, Uncle Weezy, on YouTube. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Just smash that like video, and then also like and subscribe. I'd love to get more subscribers watching my content. I hope you found this to be useful. Let's make some money next week at UFC Vegas 30 and cash some tickets. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it.